international affairs commentator Douglas Herbert. Doug, just listening to Gulliver there, he's saying there's at least a symbolic value. What do you make of it? 1 kilometer away, deliberate target, or coincidence?
I don't think you even have to ask the question, Will. Of course it was deliberate. It was a message. Look, do you remember when the Moskva was sunk by Ukrainian missiles, something never acknowledged by Russia officially, a couple of weeks back? In the wake of that, you had basically Russia lashing out, striking targets across Ukraine in retaliation. The message then, as now, was basically, we are not deterred, we are not bowed. We can strike wherever we want and whenever we want, and you can do nothing about it. That is essentially the message. And since then, since the sinking of the Moskva, what's really changed? Well, you've had a new Russian general appointed, General Dvornikov, who has basically been charged with making sure that there is coordination and control and a central command in this campaign, which is now being mainly waged in the east. But let's not be fooled. Obviously, it's still Ukraine itself is still the overall broad target here. And yeah, striking, obviously, like you said, 1 kilometer from where a meeting had just ended a couple of hours earlier between the UN Secretary General, the president of Ukraine, as well as the visiting prime minister of Bulgaria. It shows that, yeah, we'll strike where we want, and we won't even be deterred by your so-called multilateral institutions. It's also showing an absolute contempt, a disdain for those institutions, the leading one being the United Nations. We don't care about you and your international institutions. We don't care about your capital city. We will strike. We are in control of this campaign. You could say all you want about the Russian forces being bogged down, making slow and uneven progress, stalling in some places, up against fierce Ukrainian resistance. At the end of the day, look at this. Look what we can do. So keep on talking, all of you Western pundits, all of you Western military analysts. This is the reality on the ground. And as you talk, we act, we strike. And by the way, if you keep doing this, if you keep ramping up the flow of arms, supplies, aid, you keep helping Ukraine, the so-called Nazified Ukraine, if you keep doing that, more of this to come. So, keep going. Business as usual. This is the war ahead, and we're just giving you a little bit of a foretaste of what you hold in store if you keep up this anti-Russian rhetoric. Putin has spoken on many times that the West is bent on splitting Russian society and destroying Russia within. And this is the type of thing where he says, and I will retaliate for it. He said at the beginning of this war, if you support Ukraine, you will see consequences the likes of which you have never witnessed in your life. That was a warning to the West, and now we're seeing in concrete terms that Putin is ready and willing anytime, anywhere to make good on those warnings.
Yeah, and despite those threats, the West has been steadfast. On Thursday, we saw U.S. President Joe Biden say that he asked Congress for $33 billion in additional aid for Ukraine.
Yeah. The United States and the Western allies, its NATO allies, have done, at least from their perspective, have bent over backwards literally to do everything they can to not do anything that could be construed as Russia as a provocation. The problem is no matter what the U.S. does or doesn't do, no matter how little or how much aid it gives, no matter how few or how many weapons it gives to Ukraine, Russia's propaganda machine, the Kremlin propaganda machine, is going to construe it the same way. Anything can and will be used as a pretext by the Kremlin to justify what has been its narrative, not just since the beginning of this invasion on February 24th, but for years, if not decades before, that the West is trying to destroy us. Like I just said, the West is trying to bring us down. Anything is justified in response. Hence, the continual allusions, which have been ramping up in recent days, to the possible use of of nuclear weapons. They know it scares. They know it intimidates the West. What Joe Biden believes he's doing right now, and it's true, the U.S. officials have used strong rhetoric, but you could also say they're reflecting the realities. They've gone beyond simply saying we're going to help Ukraine. They've also, Lloyd Austin, when he met a few days ago with Volodymyr Zelensky, he basically said, we want to deter Russia's ability to wage a similar act of aggression against any NATO ally or European allied nation in the future. We want to weaken Russia's military. Those are fighting words, obviously, for Vladimir Putin. Now, the West would say it's just trying to help Ukraine here with billions and billions in aid, but the U.S. is going to have to do the lion's share of the work here, because when it comes to military capacity and the ability to supply arms, Europe is simply no match for the capability the U.S. has. But let's be clear, and I'll end with this, no matter how much or how little the U.S. provides, no matter how little or how much Biden says, the Kremlin will interpret those as provocations just the same.
All right, Doug, thank you very much. Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator.